Coming up this episode, capturing landscape visitors like never before in O-Gauge, our layout of the month, the Summit. Phil Parker gets busy making this small shed diorama that's ideal for a small layout space, and I get to check out a new wireless model railway control system. So sit back and enjoy.
We are the Yeovil Model Railway Group, and this is our O-Gauge layout of the Summit, which is based on A's Gill on the Settle and Carlisle line. The layout consists of the main spine where the track is. The scenery then is hung off the back and hung off the front. We decided that it would be a layout that we could run anything on. The ethos of the club is if we want to run a particular train, we will run a particular train. We wanted to show that the railway was in the scenery. We have the signal box, we have the viaduct at the other end, and we have the working signals that will, they're all something to talk about. We transport it in a large 7.5-ton vehicle. It takes 10 of us 5 hours to put together at each exhibition. We decided early on that we wanted a manual control of the signals. At the time, Modratech, the Australian company, were advertising their wares, and we put together the locking diagram for A's Gill, which it's based on, and sent it out to him. And we had a few extra levers put in because the signalman will come out and signal a train across the crossing from the down line to the up line, or vice versa. During the operation, there are two operators around the back who are monitoring the trains going through from the cameras that are situated at the back of the layout. We are fortunate in having a chicken shed that we can build this in. The latest one we are in has enough room for us to build two of these. We have competitions in the club, and we will buy a bulk amount of open wagons, and we will give one to each member to go away and bring back when it's made and get judged in the competition. Although some of the wagons do get seen to by our weathering experts when they've been through the competition. Our previous layout, Gasworks, was a smaller O-Gauge layout, and we decided that we needed to build a large layout as our last big effort. It was conceived in the late 1990s and work started in 2000, all down to one member, Brian Draper, who is no longer with us, I'm afraid. He conceived the whole layout before we even cut a piece of wood or laid a piece of track. It was all down in one book, which we still have. We would prefer not to have our main designer die on us, which was a great shame. But there's nothing we can do about that. I'm not sure that we would do anything different. He'd be pleased.
Those of you who are regular BRM readers or viewers will know that I really like making things, and I really like making models that are full of atmosphere, got a little bit of life about them. Now this started many, many years ago. One of the first kits I built was the Wills line-side scrapyard. Now it's a tiny little model, but it can be fitted into any corner of a layout and just puts a bit of life, something that's a little bit different in there, and it's a really, really easy kit to make. So let's have a go. The kit itself will cost you all of a £5 and comes in the standard Wills bubble pack with card backing and clear plastic. I mention this because it's quite important. Wills kits have a tendency, let's tear that open, to use the packing as part of the kit. So you can see we've actually got the signs in the back that we're going to be using on the model, and quite often if you've got a building that's got windows in, the clear plastic packing will be part of the kit, and you'll actually be using that to glaze the windows. So be a little bit careful with it and don't just throw it away. The kit itself comes moulded in something like the right colours, so you've got grey walls for the stone and some green bits for the corrugated iron, perhaps not, and a rubbery black scrap pile that actually looks like it should come off the Alien from the film, but it's quite nicely moulded with a load of useful scrap in there. Simply remove the parts from the sprues, and I do that with a sharp craft knife, cutting reasonably close to the edges of the part, but being careful not to cut into them. And once I've done that, just sanding off any leftovers on the bottom of the part. Like most plastic kits, there is actually a bit of thought gone into making it easy for builders, and you've got little lugs on the back to help you align the parts. Gluing plastic kits together, it is really easy, but a lot of people don't grow up with Airfix Spitfires nowadays, so I'm using Humbrol Precision Poly here. A little bit of that squeezed along the area where I want to make the joint, and then just put the two parts together. And at this point, you should now wait for the glue to dry. I'm too impatient for that, so what I do is I then use some liquid poly, which actually will work as a glue on its own. It's a solvent for the plastic, so it's going to melt the plastic slightly and bond the two together. But what I tend to find is that this works really, really quickly, and sometimes it evaporates before the two parts have fixed, whereas this stuff works quite slowly. So it's great because you can grab the parts or tack them together and then put a wash of this down the joint, and it'll thin the thicker glue and pretty much instantly set the joint. And it's also nice and clean. Do try and work from the inside where you can. If you can't, then use the very liquid glue on the outside, and just be careful not to touch the surface while the glue's drying, because what it's done is it's softened the plastic so that it bonds them together, and where that plastic is soft, it will take your fingerprint. So if you've got a nice smooth surface, you can guarantee you're going to plonk your thumbprint right in the middle of that, and it'll be a pig to sand out and clean out later. Here's one I built earlier. What I've done here is I have fixed all the bits. You can see there's some corrugated iron patching up the wall that just goes inside the front of the of the front wall, and you can actually see again supports for that in there, and a little piece of corrugated iron on the sprue. That's, you know, a few minutes work to glue together. The interesting stuff comes when you actually decide to paint it, because Wills, in their infinite wisdom, have moulded it in what they would call a self-coloured plastic, but self-coloured plastic kits, if I'm honest, never look the right colour. We've got this sort of mottled black effect with a bit of brown thrown into it as well, and let's be honest, that doesn't look much like stonework. So we are going to have to paint, but again, £5 worth of kit. It's a fun little project, and it's a great way of practicing your painting, especially stone painting, which people find sometimes slightly difficult. Anyway, for convenience, I've gone for Humbrol Dark Stone, which is brown. And I'm going to then pick out some of the individual stones, because stone itself obviously is not a completely uniform colour. I'm going to mix myself up some varying shades of the stonework. Let's just get in there. Now, picking up the various shades, again, not particularly difficult, but it's one of those sort of fiddly little jobs that people tend to get a little wrong, because you actually want great subtlety in your colours. First starting point for this is a little bit of plastic sheet. Doesn't have to be plastic sheet, can be a plastic packing. Anything you've hauled out of the bin that's made of plastic will work perfectly well for this. And then get yourself a nice dollop of the base colour of your wall, because everything you're going to do is going to be shades of that base colour. Then pick a sort of beigey colour. Handily, Humbrol do a very nice pale stone, and pick out a nice dollop of that and put it on your plastic. Important to be sitting on the plastic, because it'll sit there for a good, certainly with enamels, for a good couple of hours before it's really gone dry. Then I'm using a Humbrol Evoco brush. They're reasonably cheap, nice brush sets. All I'm doing, I'll just mix a little bit of the two colours together on my bit of plastic, which I might grandly call a palette if I feel the need, and just pick out individual stones. Now, I'm not being too careful with this. You don't have to get very worried about not going over the edge of the stones, because the next step will hide a lot of that. And you can do this basically until you get bored. It's not a desperately exciting job, but what you're aiming to do is just pick out a few stones in the lighter colours. It just takes the uniform look away from your plastic stonework, so it looks a bit more like the real thing. And this is actually a technique that you use on brickwork, tiles, pretty much any building surface that you're modelling. Now, I use quite a bit of talcum powder in my modelling. I do what's called pouncing it into the surface, which is the paint's drying. Pick up some talcum powder on the brush and just dab it into the surface. And this does several things. It helps blend the whole thing together. It'll dry the paint pretty much instantly, and it will make sure it's matte. It also lightens it a little bit. You'll find that if you're working with weathering powders and you feel you're getting stuff that's too dark, a little bit of talcum powder will lighten that. But you can see just that little bit there, my stonework is already looking a lot closer to the same colour, so that it's blended the colours in rather nicely there. That's a useful technique. It also handily on plastic stonework, it just gives it a little bit of texture, because sometimes plastic bricks and stone can be a little bit too shiny and smooth because they're made of plastic, and the real things are obviously made of aggregates. This is the side I've already done the painting on, and I've left it to dry. This next stage, you do need to leave the model to dry overnight, ideally, and longer if you can do it, because you want that paint absolutely bone dry. Because the final stage is to put some wash over the whole paint. Now, I will use all sorts of wash for watercolours. The thinned brown paint, the Games Workshop people make some very good shading inks, which you've seen me use in the past. That works very, very well. Here I've got some Humbrol dirty brown wash, or dark brown wash, which is a sort of thinned paint that Humbrol do. And this is where you get the clever bit, because you just brush it over the whole surface. This is why you didn't need to make sure you've got all the stones really accurately painted, because the brown wash in the mortar just does all the neatening up of the lines for you. Great area to practice your weathering on. It doesn't matter, throw some rusty weathering powders at it. Quite frankly, whatever you do, it's going to look about right, but it's a great place to experiment. And then all I did was I set the scene, a little bit of plywood in this case, you'd normally put it on your baseboard, and I've used some chinchilla sand covered in various emulsion paints just to give myself a little bit of texture around the front, some electrostatic grass and a little bit of greenery around the back, and there you have it. A nice little scene that could sit in the corner of your yard and just add a little bit of atmosphere to the thing.
So we're here at the Festival of British Railway Modelling at Doncaster Racecourse, and I'm here on the stand with Protocab with Tony. So pleased to meet you, Tony. Brilliant to see you.
Thanks for coming along. We call it a battery-powered wireless control system, mainly because we're using a system which is very akin to your Wi-Fi router. We have a controller, and this is an early model of controller, we'll show you that in working in a minute. The locomotive itself has everything in this particular one in the tender. So we have a battery, we have a locomotive control unit that does the radio reception and actually handles the speed control and other functions. And we also have in there this plug charging unit which we use to charge the batteries in situ without having to remove them.
Right, so battery life, what can we expect to get out of the current batteries that you've fitted to locomotives?
Typically, I mean, it does vary on load, it varies on how long you're going to do it, but typically we've been running this locomotive all day today. We have 4 hours this morning, we topped it up for about an hour this afternoon, because the great advantage with the lithium ion battery is that you don't have to discharge it completely, you can top it up at any time. Okay. So we'll top it up and not really, no.
So just for somebody coming at this from a new angle, what are the advantages of going completely wireless over, say, DCC?
Well, DCC is great. I've had a DCC system myself, but I basically don't get on with wiring. I don't get on with point switching, and I certainly don't get on with reverse loops. Now, I know there's an awful lot of facilities for that, but I've come from a background where I want to run it as per the prototype. We're modelling the prototype, and if the fuel is carried on board the real engine, so it should be carried on board the model engine. So one of the major advantages for the modeler is not having to put wiring in, but another advantage, obviously, is not having to clean the track. The logical step is to not have to touch the locomotive at all. So what I'd like to do is to bring my son Daniel, who is our technical guru, into this, and I'd like him to explain to you how the wireless charging system works.
Basically, we can have a pad that fits between the rails, and we can move the loco over the wireless charging pad.
Okay.
And then when it's in position, then the light comes on. Yep. Yeah, and actually it allows for opportunistic charging. So when you have other locos that are in motion around the layout, other locos can be charging, and so the overall running time can be improved. So this is the O241 touch controller. It's significantly more powerful than the previous controller that we had, the O201, and it can support up to 128 locomotives. And it's all menu driven, which makes it so much more easy to use. So I've got a management menu in which I can change various aspects of the system, so I can update the system using this button here. I can unadopt it the locomotive from this controller. I can also see aspects of the locomotive, such as the firmware version, so I know whether or not it's up to date. And if I look at the characteristics now, I've got things like acceleration, braking and friction. And I can also change the polarity of the motor leads. So if I've soldered them the wrong way around, that's not a problem at all. I can just change that in software. So let's go and see how we actually drive the locomotive. So we'll select the locomotive up. And then we've got here 2 dials. So one is an ammeter, tells me how much current is going into the motor, so I can determine whether or not the motor is drawing too much power for that particular locomotive control unit. And I can also see a real-time accurate speedometer, so that allows me to know whether or not the locomotive is stalled, for instance. And again, I get the battery indication at the bottom. I have 2 different modes of operation, so I have a direct mode of operation and then I have a simulation mode of operation, which allows you to simulate inertia, and those were the characteristics we were changing a little bit earlier. And new for this 2017 product range is what we call glide control, and that allows for slow starts and stops, which is a very important feature for many modelers. And that provides prototypical running. And then on this particular loco, we also have lights. So there's 3 lights here have been set up. So rear tail light, rear headlight, and forward headlight as well. And so I can select those up to operate the lights on this particular locomotive.
The buttons themselves can have a description of the user's preference. The user can put them on themselves. They could, if they wish, put a graphic on there to remind them which locomotive it is. They switch the locomotive on from the control button now, rather than switching it on from the loco switch as you saw previously. And the important thing is that the battery, in order to conserve its life, will automatically go into a deep sleep mode after a set time, usually about half an hour.
The important thing for us is to increase that range of locomotives that we can control with the system. The 2017 range includes smaller loco control units that can fit in N-gauge locos, for instance, or tank locomotives, and also higher power loco control units to fit into the O-gauge market, basically.
Right. You switch it on at the bottom, power, network is established, locomotive, just press down on the coal there, up comes locomotive B, press button B, we're green to go. Turn the knob, and we're away. No wires, no track cleaning. So if you'd like to check out Protocab's system, visit its website at www.protocab.com for pricing and availability. And if you see the guys at a show, be sure to say hello to them. And with chips as small as that to fit to your locomotive, well, it's child's play. Give it a go, and let's see some of these Protocab systems in your set. Well, unfortunately that's all we've got time for, but check out our extras menu where you'll be able to discover an exclusive BRM interview with Hornby's Paul Isles. And remember, there's plenty more to come next month. Like what you saw in this episode? All the great content from your favourite monthly read is just a click away as a digital download. Whether you're on PC, Mac, tablet or smartphone, you can read BRM wherever, whenever. Downloads are duplicates of the printed magazine, on sale a week sooner. Expect layout and practical features with higher quality images, plus bonus photographs of the best in model railway photography. What's more, every episode of BRM TV is included too, so you can stream on demand. Save storage space, lost discs and money, plus zoom in on pages and discover more detail. So, to discover the many benefits of going digital, head on over to pocketmags.com/BRM, explore our digital back issues and get your free sample of BRM today.